All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. It's the Week 13 Sunday recap show coming to you live right here on the FP YouTube channel. And it was quite an odd afternoon with many star players suffering a holiday hangover. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, back from the holiday with one of our favorite Fantasy Pros family members. She's an ACC apologist and a noted John Mechie enthusiast. She's Tera Roberts. Tera, how are you, and how was the Thanksgiving holiday for you and the fam?
Thanksgiving was fantastic. Food was fantastic. Turkey was amazing. And we'll do some apologies for John Mechie today as well. So lots of apologizing.
Yes. It was a difficult week for sure. We'll break it all down. I'm seeing a lot of disappointment already rolling through the live chat. Let us know down in the comments below who was your Week 13 hero and who was maybe a villain for you. We want to hear from you. Tonight's program does look like this, folks. We're going to break down the most notable injuries. We have some notes from Dr. Deepak Chona. He's stuck on a tarmac right now, but he still got us everything we need to know. We'll break down the potential fantasy football impact of those injuries. Then we'll get to the top 5 fantasy storylines of the day. We'll take a trip to the panic meter. Then we'll round out the show with a rapid fire Q&A. So send any questions you have, and we'll be sure to try to get to as many as we can. And before we jump in, a huge shout out to everyone tuning in with us, either on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel or after the fact on the audio feed. We appreciate all the support so far this season, especially as things get pretty busy during the holidays. So we really appreciate you making time for us. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content. Also, make sure you subscribe if you're new. Please help us get to 300,000 subscribers. We can only do it with your support. So let's go ahead and get into the injuries, Tera. And it starts on Thursday, where we saw Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. He exited Thanksgiving Day with an ankle injury. So many of my family members had him in wagers, in fantasy lineups. So a lot of disappointment over there in our household. Deepak is telling us that this is a low ankle sprain that could get played through. Reports are suggesting that he is going to push through to play next week, which is a possibility, but most likely not the outcome we see. Absence tend to be short term on this injury, though, with an average of about 1 week to return. Wide receivers typically see a dip in target numbers for the first 3 weeks post-injury. So, Tera, I ask you, we'll talk more about who might be available to pick up in a 1 week stint for Amon-Ra if he does miss. But if he's out, how do you feel about Jameson Williams? He was awesome this past week. He went for a season high 26.9 fantasy points against the Green Bay Packers. He has Dallas next week. What are your thoughts on JMO if there is no Amon-Ra?
I love him. I mean, he'd been so reliable up until the week prior's absolute zero. So outside of that, we really see him come to life here with Sam Laporta out, Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially being out will definitely narrow the target share there as well. We'll see other people step up, but Jameson will definitely be rising up the rankings this week.
Yeah, I think he's almost a sit it and forget it. He goes from that fringe wide receiver 3 flex play more closer to a wide receiver 2, I think. So really looking forward to seeing what JMO can do. Hopefully we see Amon-Ra St. Brown back soon, though. I know a lot of fantasy managers are depending on him. Also, we do have Los Angeles Rams running back Kyren Williams. He exited and then returned with an ankle injury. Deepak is telling us that comments suggest an ankle sprain, but he was already able to return. So he said that Kyren Williams did that. The scar tissue he had from prior injuries actually helped him to some degree in this spot. He wouldn't expect this to cause an absence next week, but if he's limited in practice, it could lead to a greater split in backfield touches. So Tera, Blake Corum this past week, he is rostered in just 12.6% of ESPN leagues. He went off for 81 yards on just 7 carries and a touchdown. How do you feel about him? Is he a must-add for you?
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be okay on him, but again, this is the time where you start focusing in and saying, okay, if I'm tracking for the fantasy playoffs, I need to start stacking up these handcuffs for situations exactly like this. So it was a friendly reminder that Blake Corum is a high priority elite handcuff that is worthy of being on benches heading into the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Is Blake Corum someone you're like willing to dish out a lot of fab for? Maybe only if you have Kyren Williams, you think?
Only if you have Kyren. Put in a bid, because you never know. He came back into the game, so people won't be clamoring to get him. So you may be able to get him on the cheap there. So it's worth a little modest ad there.
Okay. We also have Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Parker Washington. He suffered a hip injury. Deepak says that there's limited info available so far, but the way he fell on the punt return suggests that it's a muscle strain, most commonly a groin. Average for these injuries are 2 to 3 weeks, but severity does vary. MRI likely pending tomorrow. Most of these would cause them to miss at least week 14. So with that being said, Tera, Jakobi Meyers, he's been super solid since coming over from the Raiders. But does no Parker Washington mean brighter days ahead for Brian Thomas Jr.? He had just 2 receptions, 28 yards on 3 targets in his return this week.
I struggle to trust him. I really do. I mean, I give him, a bit of a reprieve. I had no interest in starting him this week because, again, this was a multi-week absence. He hadn't been really successful. Making this more of a cautious play and kind of standing back and saying, okay, let's wait and see exactly what you give us in this first game back was probably the better move there. But it does narrow down target share again there. So it moves him into the, hey, potential flex option. Do I feel comfortable starting him over some of our more solid wide receiver twos? Absolutely not. But I think it does make me a little bit more interested in, as if I could be more interested in Britton Strange there.
Okay.
Again, just if you're looking, because tight ends are just dwindling down. We've got the injuries that we're dealing with and everything. So if you're looking for just a solid play there, a guy that you know is going to go out there and get you 10 plus fantasy points in PPR, Britton Strange is your dude.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you there. Up next, we have Indy, we have New York Jets, we have Denver, and then Indy again, both those last 2 matchups coming on the road. So I think I'm with you there that I'm going to be hesitant to start BTJ right in lineups. I'm sure you got a ton of live stream questions about him coming back off the injury this week. I know I did, and pretty much my sentiment was, unless you have to, I would sit him. Let's see what we get back. I still want to see that once again. We'll talk about his quarterback more later on in the show, though, who's been on a kind of a hot streak right now. And let's go to one more injury here at the wide receiver position, where we have Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. He suffered a heel injury. It was a really solid return for MHJ, but it was kind of cut short here. Deepak telling us most commonly this is a heel contusion. Info, once again, limited so far. If that is the case, though, playing through risk aggravation and could worsen the severity. Given that they have limited amount to gain by playing him, Deepak is leaning towards a conservative management approach in this one. So Tera, if that's the case and there's no Marv for at least the next week, is Michael Wilson back to almost auto start territory against the Rams?
He is, yeah. And, targets were there. He had the same amount of targets, although granted, Marvin Harrison's came on a lower snap count there. But yeah, Jacoby Brissett, volume, 300 yards. He's getting it. And, good game from Trey McBride. It puts Michael Wilson back on the table. And then it also bumps up Craig Dortch if you need a low end flex spot start as well. So, yep, we're back in on the Cardinals pass catchers outside of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Fantastic. Also, we have Arizona Cardinals running back Trey Benson. He was a DNP on Thursday and Friday, and this comes after being limited earlier in the week. So Deepak is saying going from a limited practice to 2 straight DNPs does raise some concern for a setback in his knee recovery. So if that's the case, most players would miss the following game, week 14 in this case. He could still make it back for week 15, Deepak is saying, but similar to Marvin Harrison Jr., they made to make a business decision and actually just decide to shut him down for the season. So Tera, is it full steam ahead for you on Bam Knight, who is averaging an impressive 14.8 fantasy points over the past 3 weeks? He's got the Rams, at Houston, Atlanta, and at Cincy to round it out.
Yeah, this will be interesting because I wish we had asked Deepak about any potential for the injury there with Amari DiMercato with a high ankle sprain. If he misses continued time, which I assume it will, multi-week injury, high ankle sprains, right? And we're on, I think, week 2 of him missing time here. Yeah, we're full stream ahead here on Bam Knight. It's not a massive upside, but again, we talked about Jacoby Brissett. He moves the ball extremely well. He provides goal line opportunities. He's also very friendly in terms of checking down. He's our perfect fantasy quarterback there. So yeah, he makes Bam Knight very much so on the table as a reliable low-end RB2. And it makes a lot of sense here. I think, people need to approach this. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but people need to approach this with the skepticism that we legitimately might not see Benson again, just because of the team situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, that looks like kind of where we're heading here. And, I've been relying on Bam Knight in a couple leagues, and it's one of those that he's gotten tossed back to the waiver wire in almost every league, right? Because people thought, okay, maybe it's actually DeMercado. Maybe it's going to be a little Michael Carter action. And then Trey Benson was coming back. Well, that might not be the case. So Bam Knight, certainly someone who should be rostered the rest of the way. I don't want to say I'm excited to play him. The matchups aren't great the next 2 weeks against the Rams and Houston, but Atlanta and Cincy to round it out in the playoffs. If you get that far, I think Bam Knight could be in your lineups. One more injury here, and it was less about one that we saw suffered in week 13, but more of a return. Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Bucky Irving, he dominated touches this week. Bucky came back, and to my surprise, he absolutely went out there and took over this backfield. 32 of 64 snaps, but 19 touches. We saw Rachaad White handle just 5, Sean Tucker with just 2. So, Tera, where do you think you are ranking Bucky next week against the Saints? And is Sean Tucker now droppable with this return?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I wanted to see how it would play out in terms of how they would use him from a change of pace perspective. I thought he had, garnered a little bit of upside compared to Rachaad White. But if they're only using that change of pace from a pass catching perspective, unfortunately, that does default to Rachaad White. They just don't trust Sean Tucker in that way. I too was surprised that Bucky came back to this level of workload, given the fact that they said they were easing back. We saw Godwin ease back in his first week. So this here was a pleasant surprise. Middle of the road matchup there next week. I definitely would rank him, top 15, I think is where I would feel comfortable there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's where I am too. He was another person that I kind of advised, let's take a slower approach like Brian Thomas Jr. I was wrong about that. I did not expect Bucky to come back and just take on this massive workload, but he looked good doing it, right? Like he didn't seem any sort of hesitant to take any hits on that arm. So I'm looking forward to Bucky being potentially a rest of season league winner because it's a great schedule. It's a great schedule for Tampa Bay the rest of the way. I thought Rachaad White kind of might be in the spot. And then we said, oh, maybe it's actually Sean Tucker. Well, we got fooled. It's actually Bucky Irving who's back in the fold. So, Tera, I appreciate all that analysis there. Let's go ahead and keep it moving here. But first, I did want to let everyone know that we have a really cool tool that can help you out when it comes to all these late inactives, and it is the autopilot tool. Let's hear from Chris Welsh on that.
Hi, I'm Chris Welsh with a very important public service announcement. Do you suffer from any of the following? Making the wrong lineup decisions every single week. A Brock Bowers late scratch. How about Jaylen Warren playing in London? Then it's like super early that he's not playing. Do you live on the West Coast and being forced into unreasonable 6 a.m. times to check your lineups? If you answered yes to any of those, we've got a solution for you. Fantasy Pros Autopilot. Autopilot can be your hero, whether you struggle with the right decisions, you're super busy, or you just need some saving from that last-minute deactivation like the Jaylen Warren in London thing. Here's how Autopilot works. First, you can just swap inactive players. You can set it up where My Playbook will automatically swap out players with suggested lineup changes for inactive players. Or you can turn on full autopilot mode, where My Playbook will automatically submit or suggest the optimal lineup based on the latest expert consensus ranks. Don't let late decisions or even your time zone ruin a fantasy matchup any single week. Work smarter, not harder at fantasypros.com/myplaybook to get started today. Why did I not have autopilot set up for Jaylen Warren?
All right, and before we get to the top storylines of the week, if you want a chance to win a Justin Jefferson signed Minnesota Vikings jersey for absolutely free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either A, go ahead and download the free Fantasy Pros app today, B, you can leave a review for the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast, or C, follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok. We are at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you're going to receive, and we will announce a winner right here on the program. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you ring the bell so you can be alerted when we have new shows up and claim your prize if you are that lucky winner. Tera, let's get to the top 5 storylines of the week, and it starts where I actually saw some comments coming in this early in the chat where Davante Adams, he doubles down yet again. He catches his 14th touchdown pass of the season. He has scored now in 6 straight games, 2+ times in 4 of the 6 last games. He has also outscored Puka Nacua in 4 of the last 5 games since Puka Nacua has returned from his 1-week absence. He is currently wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game, averaging 17.1 points per game coming into week 13. Rest of season schedule, not bad. Arizona, Detroit, at Seattle, at Atlanta to round it out. So Tera, is Davante making his case that he should be a top 5 option the rest of the way?
Yeah, he is. Find yourself somebody that loves you the way that Matt Stafford loves Davante Adams in the red zone. It's insane the way that he just naturally looks for him. And we saw it. I mean, it's been this way all season. He's just been dominating in terms of red zone targets. And it took him a while to really get on the same page there. But once they got into a groove mid-season, it's been lights out since then. I think it's going to stick. Even when there's games where there's just low volume from him, it's purely a red zone thing where Matt Stafford is just locked in on him every single game. And rest of season, everything is pass friendly. Matchup apparently does not really matter. The volume is coming there, and Davante Adams is just there is no scenario. I mean, you're starting him over the vast majority of wide receivers.
Yeah, I think so. Would you rather have Davante or Puka, do you think, the rest of the way?
I think I would rather have. I think I would go with the younger asset there and say I would go with Puka, just because again, he is an ageless wonder, but he is 32, so you never quite frankly know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also in the storylines for number 2, we have, is Tetairoa McMillan actually the rest of season rookie wide receiver 1 over Emeka Egbuka? Coming into this week, the rookie of the year odds were T-Mac at +130. Egbuka was right around that 2-1, +250 range. Tet was leading in receiving yards, receptions, and tied for the most touchdowns. Though this week we saw kind of Tet once again save his week on a big touchdown, 1 for 43 and 1 on 2 targets. Third straight game with a touchdown, though. Egbuka, 4 for 42 on 8 targets. So Tera, taking away that Tet does have that week 14 bye, how would you rather, or who would you rather have the rest of season for the fantasy playoffs? And who do you think wins rookie of the year?
Yeah, it should in theory be Tet, but I do feel like that. Late season, actually, I think it's going to lean towards McMillan there, just because, Godwin looked really good finally here. Apparently holding him out the right amount of time really did him a service there. So then that's the first time we've seen him be dominant in that fashion. So, and we've got, potentially Mike Evans coming back here as a late season ad there as well. So yeah, I think it does tilt towards McMillan. And when I look at strength of schedule there, both not bad, but I think ultimately with the way that Bryce Young is playing, the touchdown equity, and now that he's finally locking in and producing from that perspective with McMillan, I'm okay with it rest of season with him. I'm starting to feel good about it, comfortable. Every now and then, an ancillary receiver will pop up, Leggett, Coker, but at the end of the day, it's just McMillan.
Yeah, I agree with you. They seemed a little bit off page in the first half, him and Bryce Young, but I think the Rams just went out there and say, hey, someone else other than T-Mac is going to beat us this week. And that's kind of what happened. So with the way the Panthers are looking and the way this NFC South division is really shaking up, I think it's a real conversation. I wouldn't blame you if you go either way. I think I'm with you that I'm more T-Mac, especially with Chris Godwin now getting back in the mix. He looked actually the best he has all season long. We might get some Jalen McMillan back in December as well, which could complicate matters. But I think overall, they're both like low-end wide receiver ones. I think Emeka has come down a little bit from where we had him earlier in this season, where he's a bona fide top 5, top 6 wide receiver. But both receivers doing really well right now, and hopefully they can pick things up a little bit as far as Emeka from the fall off he's seen a little bit as of late. And staying with the Panthers there, Tera, the third storyline of the week, which may be one of the biggest if you are a Rico Dowdle manager. He started to regress a little bit in this matchup against the Rams. Chuba starting to come back to life. Meanwhile, Rico was 18 for 58, 3.2 yards per carry. He did have 2 for 21 through the air, 9.9 fantasy points. Still been rock solid in that RB2 spot, but less of the RB1 that we saw over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Chuba Hubbard, meanwhile, 17 for 83, 2 for 41 through the air, and a touchdown, 20.4 fantasy points. Chuba actually also outsnapped him, Tera, 38 to 27. 5 for Trevor Etienne. Rest of season schedule, a bye week in week 14, then New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Seattle. So how are you ranking this backfield rest of season? The Panthers, they're 7-6. They could very much be in this mix for the division after upsetting the Rams today.
Yeah, the run defense, it's kind of like middle of the road there. But at this point, we've got enough evidence to say that, from a run blocking perspective, the Panthers have no issue. So matchup wise, it doesn't really matter. These guys are producing. But yeah, Chuba has been outperforming them. And, to the Panthers' credit, they made it clear earlier that they were going with the hot hand. So they never said that hot hand couldn't change there. So it's tilting back towards Chuba. This was the first time we've seen him come through on the ground, though, because he's been successful, but they've still been giving the bulk of the carries to Rico there. And Chuba had been coming along there from a pass catching perspective. But I think it makes us a little bit less comfortable with saying that Rico is that locked in, consistent, going to get the bulk of the workload there rest of season. So it does push him back there a little bit. I don't think this is a permanent tilt, but I do think that this is the hot hand version of Rico's hand, not so hot right now.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of how Tampa Bay sometimes deploys their running backs. They're almost taking a page out of that book. So I think instead of ranking where we had Rico as pretty much a top 12 option, you have to start him every week. He's now more into that, mid-range RB2. And I think Chuba probably a flex the rest of the way. Like if you need him, you can spot start him, I think, in your RB2. And if you're desperate out of flex, I think you can now put him in, where a couple weeks ago, people were saying, hey, let's cut bait with Chuba. But good to see him at least get back in the mix. They still have a lot of capital tied up in him, right, with the contract they gave him last season. And also Rico going to be a free agent. So I'm excited to see how that kind of plays out from an offseason perspective. But right now, I think it does shift a little bit of expectations. But I think we can at least feel good overall. Like you said, the run blocking is great, and the Panthers very much in the mix of things for a playoff position. Storyline number 4, Trevor Lawrence turns in another QB1 performance. He has been a QB1 in 3 of the last 4 games coming into this week. He's only had one finish worse than QB14 as well since week 5. I was not really keen to how good T-Law had been playing until someone dropped a question earlier this week in one of our live streams. Hey, should I start Trevor Lawrence? I think it was over Lamar or someone like that, and I advised maybe against it. But at the same time, this has been a really good stretch for Trevor Lawrence, and now he turns in another QB1 finish, likely pending Sunday night and Monday Night Football against the Titans. Not the best competition, but still 16 for 27, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, also adding a little bit of a rushing floor, 3 for 25, and 21.7 fantasy points as a whole. Rest of season schedule, pretty dang nice as well for a couple of these matchups. Indy, New York Jets. You don't love the Denver Broncos in week 16, but then back at Indy. Indy's been a little more get-a-boy as of lately. So, Tara, how much confidence do you have in T-Law down the stretch if you need a quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's tilting a little bit. And then we had Sauce Gardner get injured as well. I don't know super kind of details on that, but that's pretty critical as well, because these, again, are multiple matchups here against Indianapolis. So it could soften up a little bit here. It's really the rushing upside that's added that little bit. He's always been kind of around there, but the increase in just those 2 or 3 or 4 rushing upside. And then if he's getting the touchdown as well, those points are helping us out there. So yeah, I do feel a little bit more comfortable. I think the run game stabilizing helped them allow Trevor to not have to panic, not have to throw aggressively here. He's been a little bit more efficient. He's succeeding despite not getting massive volume. And I think that's why it doesn't stand out, because it's not like he's out there throwing for 300 plus yards. That's not happening. Right. He's just throwing touchdowns and being a little bit more efficient.
Well, I think part of it, too, is the Jaguars defense just so good at capitalizing and getting turnovers, right? They're kind of this bend, don't break type of defense, where they're going to give up some yards, but they could turn you over. Specifically in the red zone, they're doing a really nice job, and that's kind of creating more opportunity for Trevor Lawrence. And he's playing efficiently, right? And that's kind of what we struggle to see with Trevor Lawrence. Would we still like the completion percentage to go up a little bit? Sure. But when you have wide receivers who have dropped as many passes as the Jaguars have, you'll kind of take what you can get. I still think I prefer quarterbacks like Jacoby Brissett the rest of the way. Joe Burrow now back in the mix as well. But, if you're starting Lamar Jackson, I think you have a very strong conversation to have if Trevor Lawrence is out there. And even Daniel Jones, would you have a strong preference in Daniel Jones or Trevor Lawrence the rest of the way?
Daniel Jones' schedule is rough. That's the only issue. So that,
Okay.
yeah, they're getting pretty close there,
Mhm.
to be quite frank, especially because, again, we just talked about it. They face each other multiple times, and the Jags defense has been,
Yeah.
they've been turning it up. So maybe it does tilt a little bit towards Trevor.
Final storyline of the week, out with the old, in with the new. This is a little bit of early week 14 waiver wire ads. Some of last week's waiver wire ads did disappoint. We talked about it at the top of the show briefly. John Mechie, 5.7 fantasy points. I was on him too, Tera, so I deserve an apology. I actually had bet him for over 32.5 receiving yards. He did not come through there. Did see a little bit of garbage time action where he was able to get 4 receptions. And then Chimry DK. This is a guy I've been sky high on the second half. And it's just the up and down roller coaster that continues. He had the big fumble. He finishes with under 0 fantasy points, was at least able to get you close back to a goose egg, but 0.1 fantasy points for the rookie out of Florida. Would you drop any of them for this week's players who popped off at the wide receiver position? We had Davante of the Saints, 8 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets, 23.3 fantasy points. AD Mitchell, also for the Jets, 8 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown on 12 targets, 24.7 fantasy points. A little bit upset with myself. I didn't see, like, Mitchell was someone who he was getting the opportunity, right? He just wasn't really capitalizing it and making production off of that. And then Isaac Tesla, who could see some volume at least here in week 14 if there is no Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was 2 for 35 and a touchdown on 2 targets on Thanksgiving, 11.5 fantasy points. So would you drop either Mechie or DK for any of these wide receivers, Tera?
So potentially DK for Tesla if we get the A okay on him, or the A not okay on Amon-Ra St. Brown, then yeah, I could do that for a spot start this week specifically. With Mechie, the only thing there is that I think, I know this for sure with me, I underestimated the fact that this was going to be his matchup with AJ Terrell. And Terrell, the Atlanta secondary has been inconsistent there.
Yep.
But that makes a lot of sense why there was that sudden flip there. And with with AD Mitchell, I'm just concerned there with both of them. Like, we'll likely potentially see a different version of this moving forward there. With Davante, the only thing is that he's cool. And I think and I do like him as a waiver wire ad this week because of the fact that, again, he is the second look in the receiving core behind Olave. But he also has it's the same thing with DK, quarterback inconsistency. Who we trust more, Tyler Shuck or Cam Ward? I mean, it's a matchup thing.
Yeah. Yep. I think I'm with you there. John Mechie, as you alluded to, still ran the most snaps, 64, AD Mitchell, 57. And I think if we see Garrett Wilson come back eventually, which who knows if we will with the Jets not having a ton to play for the rest of the way, I think Mechie would, consistently see more work than AD Mitchell would. So I'm with you. I'm still holding Mechie. I think brighter days are ahead for him. Still 8 targets, right? So like the opportunity was there. And you're right, man. Like AJ Terrell is someone, like, sometimes I feel like I downgrade wide receivers for, and other times I don't, because he is a bit inconsistent. Like, he's not one of these, absolute shutdowns like Sauce and Christian Gonzalez that you really want to run away from. But he certainly can make things hard for a young wide receiver, as he did in this matchup. So I'm with you there. A couple names. I'm sure we'll have some more waiver wire content coming out on Monday. Jake Sealy will have his top 5 or top 6 waiver wire ads, and then you'll have the full show with our friends Debro, Joe Pisapia, and of course Pat Fitzmaurice as well to help you out there on the waiver wire. And before we get to the panic meter, a quick reminder that today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in the state of Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, coming soon to more states as well. Sign up today and you could score $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but also $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're not sure where to place your first bet yet, no worries at all. Just head over to the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub and it'll help you out. It's got trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Hard Rock Bet now also offers new promos every single day. Plus, big legendary reward drops happen every Thursday, like gifts from under the tree. So whenever you're listening, just go ahead and fire up the app and check out what they've got for you. Download the Hard Rock Bet app now and make your first deposit. And folks, let's go ahead and fire up the panic meter. Let us know down in the chat below who you're panicking about, and we'll rate them on a scale from 1 to 10 about how much we're panicking on them. 1 means, hey, we're not really panicking at all, and 10 means it's full-blown panic mode, so we want to hear from you. And Tera, we already got a couple of these locked and loaded, and the first one is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, a bit underwhelming this week from our friend Awesome Dev. How do you feel about them? Josh Allen, to me, not really on the panic meter at all, but I think the conversation now with Lamar gets more and more every week. I think he's been on the panic meter for, a month straight almost at this point?
Yeah, it's getting highly concerning there. Something's not right. And then at the end of the day, like just from a pass catcher perspective, the most reliable option that he has is Zay Flowers, who is just not producing. Then you turn to Mark Andrews, who again just is unreliable in general with drops. It's not an ideal situation. They are still pushing for the playoffs. Like that division is just a mess of mid. So they're still incentivized there. But yeah, not panicking on Josh. Every now and then he just is a little bit strange there. But Lamar, yeah, I'm at a 7. There's nothing we can really do about it because unfortunately we're getting extremely thin at quarterback, particularly this week.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I think you have to start trying to make maybe some other plans if you have Lamar. That's kind of how I feel about it. I felt like when the trade window was open, you should have been trading him away to get an RB2, a wide receiver 2. And now, like, if Trevor Lawrence is out there, Sam Darnold's got a really good matchup this week. I know it was pretty ugly for him and JSN and the crew in week 13, but I think there are real concerns for Lamar. Just doesn't look healthy to me, right? Like, I feel like he isn't stepping into his passes. He's not running with conviction as much anymore. So I want to see that come to fruition a little bit more before I'm going to roll him back out there. Likely, if you have Lamar, you might be in a bad spot, so hopefully you have some other options. How do you feel about Woody Marks? Where's he on the panic meter for you, Tera? Right now, Woody Marks, he was in and out of the lineup this week with an injury. This is like the third time, I think, this season this has happened. He did take 41 snaps. Nick Chubb had 26 of them as well, but just 7.7 fantasy points for him, 19 rushing attempts, so 64 yards, but didn't really see a lot of action in the receiving game, just one target, and it was Nick Chubb who found the end zone.
Yeah, and I have not had the time or patience to look at the red zone splits over the past couple of weeks there. But the problem is that Marks is definitely the lead back. He is outperforming. There's not a major issue there, but unfortunately, there's not enough receiving upside to carry him through, and there's not the touchdown opportunities. So if we're getting this continued, like, okay, Powerball, let's, bring in Nick Chubb, that's a major issue because there is not enough volume there to make Woody Marks very reliable. So honestly, like he's low-key kind of falling into the, I hate to say it, the Chris Rodriguez category of, yeah, you're a lead back. Yeah. But you need a touchdown and Chris Rodriguez is getting a touchdown. So unfortunately, Woody Marks is just really underwhelming.
Yeah, I think he's more shifting from that reliable RB2 category more into that RB3 if you need a flex play for Woody Marks. And next week it's the Chiefs, so you don't love that, even it being on Sunday Night Football. The Chiefs are a really good run defense, and it's the Cardinals, Raiders, and Chargers the rest of the way. So it's not a brutal schedule, but it's not what I'm necessarily excited about. So I'm with you. I'm probably like, a good 5, good 6 on Woody Marks. I think it's time to readjust expectations more than anything, though. Amazon Pancake, old man Nick Chubb, still relevant. Not enough relevant that you can play him in fantasy football, but enough relevant to upset you a little bit here. What about Justin Jefferson for you this week, Tera? He is someone I think who's also, we've taken a trip to the panic meter on multiple times. It's been single-digit performances from him in 3 out of the last 4 weeks, just 2.4 fantasy points. I feel like we have to have an explosive game from him down the stretch, right? Washington, Dallas, Giants, Detroit to round out. So a fantastic schedule, one of the best when it comes to the Fantasy Pros rest of season strength of schedule tool. Still, though, like I think if JJ McCarthy is back, like he obviously, I think I saw someone in the chat saying he is a winner just because how bad we saw the former Minnesota Golden Gopher play under center today. But still, I think Justin Jefferson, we have to have some degree of panic, but it's still a great schedule. So are you starting him? Are you sitting him the rest of the way? And where's he at on the panic meter for you?
He's a flex option. He has moved out. He's every single week he's been creeping down those rankings, and I've not been afraid to do it. But man, there's just not a ton of upside there. At least if we get JJ, if and when we get JJ, well, he'll definitely earn his job back when we get JJ McCarthy back. At least he was giving volume and targets. Like the targets were getting there. So that's a good thing. They just weren't super accurate, and Justin Jefferson was not able to be super productive. So we were getting like a little bit of a floor there, but something that's more of like a low end flex floor. So yeah, you're starting him, but it's a flex play, unfortunately. There are quite a few wide receivers that you need to be looking for over Justin Jefferson at this point. This is major panic, unfortunately.
Yeah. So disappointing. And I still think like there will come maybe a 30 or 40 point game. I still think that, like he has that upside, but it just feels like the floor is no longer there. And that's what you were drafting him for, was the super consistent floor. So I think he's out of the wide receiver 2 territory. He's more in that flex consideration, as you alluded to, but still someone I think I'm trying to get into lineups, but it's just been tough, but it could get better. Again, JJ McCarthy, very raw prospect. So maybe we see him improve just a little bit down the stretch here. So last one on the panic meter. We talked about him a little bit earlier. We have a question though on panic meter for Emeka Egbuka. Tera, I think it's just another one we need to readjust expectations for. Baker, I don't think 100% healthy, but the rest of season schedule pretty strong for Egbuka. New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, Miami. I talked about it at the top of the show. I still think he is a low-end wide receiver one rest away. I'm at a 2 or a 3 panic meter on Egbuka. It's not going to be the absolute stallion performances we saw early in the season, but he's still a guy I think who is in lineups every single week.
Yeah, the only issue is that as you read off those team names, all I heard were cornerbacks there that I was like, oh, those where he lines up on the field.
That's fair.
He's getting the number 1 there, unfortunately. So yeah, I think the schedule might not for him in particular. Fine for Baker, fine for Chris Godwin. It might be a wee bit of an issue for Emeka.
Yeah, that's a good point with Terrell out there. And then also JC Horn for the Panthers. That might be a little bit difficult. So yeah, maybe I need to readjust. So would you say still like wide receiver 2 territory for Egbuka, you think?
Low end wide receiver 2 flex option. I kind of see him and Rome Odunze as the same person. They're very, yeah. I like. Okay. I roster them on the same team here. They're just hanging on tight to a first round bye. We're hanging in there. Yeah. Unfortunately, they have the potential to get there. They've got the boom, but the floor is super low. Super low. Okay. And before we round out the show, taking your fantasy football questions, a reminder, you can also ask questions over our Fantasy Pros Discord community. You can chat with other fans and actually get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Our current schedule for the rest of the season looks like this. We have Worm and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of every month. So that's coming up this week for you. And then Boggs and Fitz, they are with you on the third Tuesday of every month. Plus Welsh and Erickson live every single Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. Also, shout to our wonderful analysts as well, who I saw a lot of them taking a lot of time during the holiday weekend to drop in and do some text AMAs with everyone. So those seem very successful. So a lot of ways you can get your questions answered right here at Fantasy Pros. And Tera, let's get to a couple questions here to round us out. And it's going to start with our friend Alex here, who he needs a start for this week. PPR league, he's down by 11. Should he play Debo or Slayton for the W? What do you think, Tera? Debo, obviously not a good matchup there again, but we do get Terry McLaurin back. That should take some of that tougher coverage to him. Debo is a good volume play. I'm low-key worried about Slayton. Isaiah Hodgins, as silly as it sounds, it seems like they're playing fairly even here in this past matchup. So I do think that there is a little split there. Then we got Jackson Dart, so that lowers the upside in terms of pass volume. Just go with Debo.
Yep, I think that's the play. Like, again, I don't love the matchup against Denver, but at the same time, like, Debo's found the end zone so many times this season. So I got to go ahead and roll him out. I don't think Slayton's a conversation. If it was Wan'Dale, maybe we could talk about that. Here's one for Jeremiah as well. He's up by 42, and his opponent has Travion and Wan'Dale. Winner gets a playoff spot. Do you think I win? Oh, this is a tough one, Tera, because we know both these players can be explosive as of late. How do you think our friend Jeremiah ends up at the end of this week?
I think and project and hope for a big game there from Travion, but I think Wan'Dale's volume is coming down with Jackson Dart at quarterback. So you should mathematically be okay there. I think you're good. I don't think we get another boom game from Wan'Dale.
Okay. Well, that hopefully makes you all feel good. Tera, thank you so much for your time today. Anything you have coming up this week? I know a lot of live streams across our socials. Anything we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, for sure. Make sure that you're following for all the live streams. This is an important week here. We got week 14, we got buys, all that good stuff. So I'll be live on the Fantasy Pros Instagram and TikTok Tuesday and Thursday. So make sure you're following so you can see when we go live.
Perfect. Also, make sure you guys are checking out Betting Pros. Tera's doing a lot of short form content over there that's been very, very helpful. We also have so much more coming on the NFL betting side of things for the rest of the season. College football also heating up, myself and Bogman over there. And make sure you guys are checking out the Twitch channel as well. I'm going to be live with D-Bro on Thursday and Friday answering some more of your questions. We also have a ton of shows happening over there every single week. I think Tera will also be back maybe on Sunday at noon. I'm not sure if it's you or me on the schedule. We'll check that out after the show this week. But so much goodness happening over here at Fantasy Pros. That is going to do it, though, for us on this episode of the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. Let us know down below your biggest fantasy football winners and losers from Week 13. We want to hear from you. Also, make sure you're giving this video a like if you enjoyed this type of content, and make sure you're subscribing to the show if you're new as well. For Tera Roberts, I'm Seth Woolcock. Take care, y'all. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you.